We'll start with an update from Kansas Sorghum. We have Maddie Meyer representing Kansas Sorghum. They said helping sponsor today's plot tour and meal. So give a good thank you to them and just get an update from the Kansas Sorghum Commission.
Yeah, thank you guys for the opportunity to be here. Like Craig said, my name is Maddie Meyer. I'm the Director of Programs for Kansas Sorghum, and essentially that just means that I pretty much run everything from communications to outreach, and I also run our internship program as well. Kind of a little bit of update from our standpoint. We just got back from our budget board meeting in Manhattan, and there we really discussed different things from marketing efforts, research, promotion, things of that nature, and they're talking to our farmers. They are really glad they planted sorghum this year. They're thinking it's doing really well, especially with those drought-tolerant traits coming into play, and that's really exciting to see. And sorghum numbers are definitely up this year as compared to last year, and that's also something that's really neat to see, especially from when you take different factors into consideration, especially from a food grade standpoint, research standpoint, crop rotation standpoint. And yeah, that's just a few things from our end. So the interest of sorghum is really rising on an international level as well. We visited with a delegation from China back in June with the U.S. Grains Council, and that was just really exciting getting to share what U.S. agriculture looked like. And yeah, if there's anything else you guys have questions with, I'd be happy to answer those. So thank you guys.
All right, we'll start off with our first presentation, and that's going to be on sorghum pests with Jeff Whitworth, K-State Research and Extension entomologist. Like I mentioned out the plot tour this year was very challenging with chinch bugs. That was kind of our main pest. I know some headworms have been kind of popping the last few weeks on some of our later milo, but for this year, our main one was sorghum or chinch bugs.
That good?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, I'm Jeff Whitworth from K-State. If you have any questions, shout them out. If you have any answers, that's always better. I will tell you this, the sorghum you guys saw today is the best sorghum I've seen around the state in the last month, really and truly. I don't know where the sorghum commission has gone to look at sorghum, but all the sorghum I've looked at is looking pretty sad this year. It just is. I mean, early on it was chinch bugs. Early on it was hot, dry. Middle of the season is hot, dry. And now it's late and still hot and dry. So I don't know what to tell you. But if I don't cover anything that you want to hear about, just ask me. This is what I'm going to talk about quickly. Chinch bugs, sugarcane rootstock weevil. Y'all ever heard that? It's coming back. Every year we have a few of them. Causes some lodging that you don't even realize. Grasshoppers, ragworms, headworms, aphids, and sorghum midge. Okay? First, chinch bugs. This is what we see every year. First of all, this year, they're really bad. I got my PhD in 1980. Chinch bugs in 1980 were really bad. It was dry. I was out collecting chinch bugs, and I'm thinking, what if it never rains again? What's going to happen? But it did. But this year is kind of like that, seriously. There's a lot of chinch bugs around, and the drought, the dry heat cause more problems. The more damage you get, the more stress you get, is what it is. So I don't know what to tell you about chinch bugs. There are a lot of them around. There are a lot of them going into overwintering, so chances are there'll be a lot of them next year. The way to manage chinch bugs, in theory, at least, avoid planting sorghum next to wheat. You know what? If you want to plant sorghum adjacent to wheat, you can do it, but you get out and sample your wheat. You get out and sample the wheat just as it started to senesce or turn brown or gold or whatever you call it, okay? If you got one chinch bug in a square foot in several different areas in that field, don't plant sorghum right adjacent to that wheat field until it has matured and they've moved out, or you're asking for trouble. Even seed treatments won't protect it a little bit, but it won't protect all of it enough because they have to take a bite out of the plant in order to get the toxin, the seed or the plant or whatever it is. Just by doing that, they can often kill the plant. Okay, so keep that in mind. You can sample wheat to see if you're gonna have a problem with chinch bugs and if you plant close to it. Timing, that's what I'm saying, plant after weed harvest. You'll avoid that walking migration. They can still come back later on, which is what they do later in the year. But that walking migration is what hurts you most of the time if you plant next to wheat. Insecticides, seed treatments really work well. I mean, we've tested them, about every 6 or 7 years. They work well, but again, they got to get a little bite out of that plant or that seed in order to kill them. And if there's enough of them, that'll kill the plant also, especially if it's under dry conditions. Okay, so keep that in mind. Any questions? I mean, that works. Any 3 of these works if you do it right. We used to take overwintering surveys in chinch bugs. The Kansas Department of Agriculture used to take overwintering surveys in chinch bugs. And they would bring them into the lab at K-State, count the bugs, and try and figure out how many are going to be there in the spring. Never could correlate exactly, so they quit doing it. But that's the problem. Here you can see the, and again, there's going to be a lot of them going into the fall, another month, when you start planting wheat. There may be a bunch of them go into that wheat. If you get, we still have dry conditions, we get 10 stands of wheat, they can actually retard the growth of the wheat a little bit, okay? They feed on grasses, any grass, brome, fescue, anything. That's what they're looking for. So just keep that in mind. Generally, they don't cause that big of a problem in the fall with wheat, but they can, especially under dry conditions, okay? This is, we've done some studies over the years with chinch bugs. We started spraying sorghum heads at flowering, a place where we had good chinch bug populations. We sprayed it twice to keep them off. We didn't spray the ones right next to it, same variety, all that kind of stuff. You can see the differences you get in chinch bugs. This is what it can actually, the problems that chinch bugs can cause. Quite a bit of difference there. Especially under dry conditions. If you have irrigation under wet conditions, it helps a lot. But if not, you can lose a lot just to chinch bugs. Chinch bugs will feed on just the heads also. Between flowering and soft dough, they can get up there and just feed on the head. Whatever's sucking it, they got to have the juice out of that plant. That's what they're after. Okay? Any questions?
Jeff,
Yes.
I had entomology at K-State in the mid-70s, and it used to be even in 80 that you got so far in the summer, and then they tended to cycle into that adult phase and out. We've actually had Sudan that we planted that took the first cutting the Sudan off, and they've literally killed the Sudan fields. In 40 years of farming, I've never seen that kind of level.
They are bad, but there's also drought. When you got the heat, it is hotter. It's getting a little hotter, dry, and that doesn't help either. But yeah, chinch bugs this year, last year they were pretty bad. This year they're probably a little more widespread than I'm used to seeing. You're right. Any grass, golf course grass, any grass, they will attack. They're looking for anything sucking to suck the juice out of it. Any other questions about chinch bugs?
What's your insecticide choice? What's the best?
Well, I hate to tell you that. What we used is Lorsban. And I haven't tested any for 2 or 3 years. So we did test them. The synthetic pyrethroids, they didn't work bad. Okay. They really didn't work that bad. The thing is, these are contact insecticides, so you got to make sure it contacts the chinch bug. So if they're down around the base of the plant, you got to get that insecticide down. You got to use enough gallonage, drop nozzles, whatever. Make sure you get the insecticide down. That's where they are, down around the base of the plant. Now, when they're up in the head, feeding in the head, that's a lot easier to control. And you only got about 2 weeks there when those heads are vulnerable. So. But yeah, we always, chlorpyrifos working pretty well. So. Sorry. Any other questions about chinch bug? Okay, sugarcane rootstock weevil. This thing's native to Kansas. It's been around for a long time. Probably about in 2007, 2008, we had a real outbreak of sugarcane rootstock weevil. I'd never even heard of it before. And they brought some up to me. I didn't know what the heck they were. So took them to Leroy Brooks. Brooks had been there since the 40s as extension entomologist. He says, oh yeah, that's a sugarcane rootstock weevil. We had a real outbreak of that in 1928. You know where I was. They're back. I've seen a lot of them this year. The thing is, they get into the plant early on, and if it's dry, talk about for next year also, if it's dry, they get into the stem or the stalk or whatever you want to call it, and they'll tunnel up and down inside there. And oftentimes it makes, I don't know why, but the plant's reaction is like if it was sprayed with a phenoxy herbicide. You know, the roots are kind of, I don't know, flattened, and they don't penetrate the soil very well. They just kind of goobered up, so the plants don't get a good root system. And then if you get some rain or you irrigate or something, be okay. Then later in the year, you get some lodging. So if you have some unexplained lodging in sorghum or corn, it gets in corn also, go out and cut it open and see if there aren't some little tunnels in there from earlier in the year. You won't notice it now except for the lodging. So I've seen a lot of these little dudes this year, especially early on. Probably notice it more because it was dry, and they affect that plant more when it's dry, just like anything else is, okay? But keep your eyes on that for next year and the year after. Any questions about this? Grasshoppers, a lot of grasshoppers. I don't know if guys just didn't want to spray them this year, or I don't know. I don't know what happened, but it seems like this year there are a lot more grasshoppers when I go to a sorghum field or a soybean field in the grassy parts of the field. There seems like there's a lot more grasshoppers, and they're starting to move out. Used to, you spray the grass, you'd kill the grass, and the grasshoppers would move out. You'd see them earlier. This year, there just seems to be a lot of them in the grass. I don't know why, but just keep that in mind, because they can move to the wheat. The only thing that's green, they're not going to die until the first frost or hard freeze. So just to let you know that the grasshoppers are out there. Most of the sorghum's past that now, but I had a couple fields I noticed it really pretty riddled. They thought it was ragworms, but it was grasshoppers. So that brings us to ragworms feeding on young sorghum. Causes this ragged type of damage, that kind of damage down there. Don't treat it. Okay? Do not treat for ragworm for several reasons, but number one, it doesn't affect yield. We've done several studies, really good studies, trying to show that it affects yield, but we just can't. The plant's just really resilient at recovering that and putting it into yield later on. That's one reason. Number two, by the time it's like this, the worms are through feeding, or dang close to through feeding, and they're going to crawl down the plant and be pupating down in the soil. And number three, if you spray it, you can't get the insecticide down into that whirl anyway where they are. So there's just no reason to spray it. But it can rag up the plant. It's just not going to affect yield. Now, if it takes it down to a nubbin, maybe, you know what I'm saying? Like that, those plants are really, really resilient. Fall armyworm, corn armyworm, these are the kind of, and just regular armyworm, these are the worms that can cause the raggedness of the plant. But a little bit later, as that plant puts on the berries or the kernels, they become headworms, because that population has pupated and gone around and laid eggs, and if those heads are in the flowering stage, they'll lay the eggs in the head, okay? That's where you're going to lose 5% per worm per head. That's easily calculated. We've done that several years also, and we get the same results, 5% per worm per head. But nice thing about it, just like chinch bugs, it's only for that 2-week period between flowering and soft dough. After that, the berries are too hard. There may still be some worms, big worms out there feeding, but they're not going to do any more damage. The damage is between flowering and soft dough. That's when the eggs are there, okay? After that, those moths go to something else to lay the eggs. Soybeans usually, because soybeans usually have more green beans coming on, and they'll go for that. They become podworms, okay? 5% loss per worm per head. They're right up there on the head. They're easy to kill, usually, okay? But remember, You have to get the insecticide to where they are. These are contact insecticides. 1 gallon per acre, 2 gallons per acre, I don't know. When we put out headworm sprays, we use 5 gallons per acre. It does a pretty good job. Now, when we do anything else, we use 15 to 20 gallons. Because what we're doing is evaluating the insecticides. We want to make sure the insecticide gets to where they are. Same thing here. So if you have an applicator and they're trying to get over the acreage, make sure they're using at least 3 gallons, even when they're up there in the hill. That's just my opinion, but I can show you the data, okay? Any questions about headworm? That's a definite loss. I mean, that's when you know if you have them, and they're easy, I think they're really easy to sample for. You go out when they're small like this, take a 1 gallon white bucket, shake the head in the bucket, shake however many heads you want, count the number of worms, that tells you the percent infestation, right? You can go back and get your county agent to calculate how much you're gonna lose because of that if you don't spray them. So, easy. Get them while they're small. Once they get large, they've done a lot of damage by them. So you want to catch them while they're small. It's all about timing. Timing and pesticide use, it's all about timing. Bed bugs, whatever you're spraying, it's all about timing, okay? Any questions about headworms?
Jeff, Corteva has a product called Markin. It's based, I think it's similar to the Ag Tech, which I haven't heard much on this year since they got sold. Do you have anything on Markin?
Well, there are some products that are specifically for worms, right? They've been around several years. I keep wanting to test them. I've never been able to get the rep to test them. I've gone out with the reps before to see fields that have been sprayed, and you'll find dead worms, but I've not been able to test them. So if you guys use any of the products and they work, that's fine. But I would really like to put them in the insecticide efficacy trials. Yeah, I keep hearing rumors that they work. Some guys use them, but I've not tried it. Anything else? All right, aphids. You all heard about aphids. We have traditionally, historically, had 4 aphids in sorghum. Cornleaf aphids, green bugs have been there since the 70s, 60s, long time in sorghum, corn, wheat. They've been causing a problem. That's really what got started with a lot of pesticide usage back in the 60s, the aphids in sorghum and wheat, stuff like that. They would come into Kansas just in, when the winds come out of the south, they come in just in numbers. The old aerial applicators, they'd be really happy when they start seeing these aphids come in. And then the yellow sugarcane aphid, that's been around forever. It's not around as much. And then the sugarcane aphid, now they want to call it the sorghum aphid. They're all sorghum aphids to me, but that doesn't matter. That's just a common name. So these are the 4 aphids you can have on your sorghum. Cornleaf aphids. Every year I get a lot of calls about these early on because just about the world stage, the cornleaf aphids around. There can be a lot of them on a few plants. You know what? I really hate to recommend treating because just on a few plants, now they can get enough honeydew that it can keep the head from extending out, but just on a few plants. And they're generally really good as a food source for beneficials to build up on later. I've not really ever seen them cause a problem in a very big area, just a plant or 2 here, but they can cause concern at least early on. Okay, sugarcane aphid damage. We've had sugarcane aphids every year in Kansas since 2014. That's the first year we detected them. 2015, 16, 17, they were pretty bad. Since then, not so much. Matter of fact, I spent this morning putting red tape around little colonies of aphids because I want to test some new products. And I go back next week and hope they've expanded. And I've done that for 3 weeks now. Every time I go back, the damn things are dead. They're gone. I mean, that's you guys are happy about that. But anyway, you got to have so many aphids to be able to put out a trial. So sugarcane aphids, this is the kind of damage we had when we first got them. You can see, I mean, this, to me, this is just really dramatic. You can see the difference, how the lodging occurred in the part of the field that was not treated, and it just weakened the stems, and they lodged, okay? Rodrigo will tell you why after a while, because here's the picture. We took them over to Judy O'Mara, who ran the pathology lab, and the ones that lodged that were not treated had fusarium. They were infected with fusarium stalker. I heard Rodrigo talking about that a little bit earlier. The ones that weren't infested with the aphid were not infected with the fusarium. So there's a direct correlation, okay? This is what that resulted in, which this is a little bit misleading. This data came from Tom Maxwell, who was Mr. Wisby's predecessor in Saline County. This shows you that there's not much difference in spraying for aphids, right? But this grower put together the equipment so that he could go really slow and get the header down on the ground and pick up the lodged grain. So if you wouldn't have done, if it had a commercial picker or harvester come through there, it wouldn't look like this. This is, you know, this is kind of unique, but it shows you it didn't really affect the grain. If you get it picked up off the ground soon enough, you're really not going to lose much, just due to the aphids. All right. Questions about that? Since then, since 2019 was the last time I found colonies consistent enough in a field to put out an insecticide drug. And then there weren't that many. I felt kind of guilty about it, but it was FMC's money, so you know what the hell, right? No, I'm just kidding. I don't know. Don't ask me why. I mean, we get them. They're coming in. Go out and stand in the sorghum field. When the wind's blowing out of the south, the aphids will be coming on. You know, they're still coming in. Even into mid-October, they're still coming in. They'll colonize. You'll see these colonies like this, right? You'll get a colony, a big colony under a leaf here or there in the field. Then the next week they're gone. I attribute that to beneficials, but it might be something else. It's not resistance, because the resistance we have in the sorghums is a tolerance. It's not antibiotics. Antibiotics is kind of, you know, when they bite into it, it kills them. So it has to be, that's why I say I could or something, I don't know. I'm attributing it to the plants are more tolerant, so they can withstand more aphids, plus we've learned to manage it a little better, plus we're not killing the beneficials like we used to, so they're helping that, okay? Any questions about aphids? The problem is, if you have, you know, the question is, if you have headworms and you may have aphids, question I always get is, should I spray my headworms? Well, that's up to you, but you're going to lose 5% per worm per head. That's easily calculated. Usually by the time the headworms are there, between flowering and soft dough, just like the chinch bugs, between flowering and soft dough, we don't have aphids yet. So are you going to spray them? You spray them, you're going to kill the beneficials. You spray them, you're going to kill the aphids also. The insecticides will kill the aphids, all right? The problem is the aphids, a lot of the colonies on the undersides of the leaves, where the insecticide doesn't get to them. Or even if it does, they're still coming in, and they explode, they reproduce parthenogenically, so those colonies can repopulate really, really fast, okay, if there aren't any beneficials. So that's the question. But you know, if you have headworms between flowering and soft dough, you lose 5% per worm per head. So, you know, that's the question. No questions about aphids? So far this year, I've seen some good, a leaf here or there with good colonies, but nothing consistent in the field. I heard of a field that was sprayed in south central Kansas, but they said it was, didn't need it, but the guy was just wanting to do it. So, you know, okay. Okay, sorghum midge, you can read this, doesn't overwinter in Kansas. Subtropical insect. I think we get a lot of sorghum midge damage. That is not sorghum midge damage. We have empty bracts for other reasons. I've looked at a lot of plants with empty bracts looking for sorghum midge, and it's not. Ignacio Simpati has a whole list of reasons of what can cause sorghum not to produce a kernel or a berry, whatever you call it, because of natural environmental conditions, okay? Usually, we have these, don't get me wrong, but usually you don't notice it until after the fact. When you go out and you have, you have heads that look like this, you say, oh man, well, I should have done something, and it's too late. You can't do anything then, all right? They're gonna overwinter in that field though, if they're there. If it's the midge, they're gonna overwinter in that field. Okay, so keep that in mind. You want to destroy the stalks, any stubble, residue, anything like that. Okay. Some years there are significant numbers of blasted heads. I've been all over looking at blasted heads. Very few are due to sorghum midge. Now, when you get down towards South Central Kansas, yeah, a few more are, but not so much up around. Okay, or in North Central Kansas. But there's a lot of other things that can cause blasted heads. But we do have sorghum midge. Keep that in mind. They are closely related to Hessian flies. You know what Hessian flies are? Get in wheat. So, all right, 2 books. This book is second edition. First edition sold out. We have Household Pests of Kansas. The county extension agents will be happy to give it to you for free. However many you need. Yeah, maybe not.
That is one of the door prizes. I'm
Oh.
giving away 2 of those.
Booby prize. There you go. Okay. All right, that's it on bugs and sorghum. Any questions?
Jeff, in Barb County, I think we had every insect known to man this summer. And we had, in forage sorghums, we actually had cucumber beetles that were a high enough level that some people were. I've never heard of it, I've heard
Well,
of gardening.
cucumber beetles are southern corn rootworms.
Okay.
Southern corn rootworms feed on pollen. There can be a bunch of them in soybeans if it's pollinating or anything. They don't cause a problem. They're just out there to get the pollen. Okay? Because guys have sprayed them got them mixed up with bean leaf beetles. They don't cause a problem. They're not going to cause a problem in corn sorghum. They're just out there getting the pollen. There can be a lot of them. And they don't overwinter in Kansas. The reason rootworms are a problem is because they lay their eggs now, and the larvae feed on the roots in the corn. Southern corn rootworms or cucumber beetles, they don't do that. So don't spray for them. One other thing, last thing, I cannot leave you without saying, make sure you destroy your volunteer wheat 2 weeks before you plant. I gotta always say that this time of year. I saw some guys working their fields on the way over there.